Osio Nagata, Andrea L. Rogers, Dawadoa, G. Chalagi. I'm a citizen of Cherokee Nation, and I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm going to start reading from a poem that I shared with a project that was done by the Center of Southwest Studies and organized by Elise Bullinger. It was called As Seeds We Grow, Student Reflections on Resilience. And what Elise tried to do was include the generations, more than one generation. And so Elise knew I was a writer. Anna Henry was a student there at Fort Lewis, working in the Indigenous Foods growing program. And Elise invited Anna to participate in the show. Anna's an artist. After talking to Anna, she extended the invitation to me as well. Anna's experience at Fort Lewis as a site that was once a boarding school, a military type boarding school, was really colored by the fact that my father and, Anna's grandfather and Anna's great-grandmother were both students at boarding schools. So both of my dad and my grandmother, my dad attended Wyandotte, which was also called Seneca Indian School, and his mother attended Chilocco. And I actually did not know that about my grandmother until after this exhibit, but I did know about my father and my father's experience. It was good and bad. It was definitely an experience where it was clear that it was the government and a lot of religious societies' purpose to separate Indian children from Indian parents and to save the Indian child from their native ways. And so where I was talking to someone recently who's a Quaker, and they said in an article they had read in one of their newsletters, it talked about how the Quakers were the ones, the Friends were the ones that ran Seneca Indian School, Wyandotte. And I know the experience wasn't always good because my dad's cousin, when he was 12 years old, hung himself there. And so he never came back from boarding school. He left a note that said, "Tell mom and dad I don't need the bicycle for Christmas." And so those kind of heartbreaking stories make it clear that maybe it wasn't the best thing. And so additionally, my father, when he went to boarding school, he could speak Cherokee. And when he left, he couldn't. And I had spoken to an aunt when I was trying to learn Cherokee, and there was a woman who was on the recordings Cherokee Nation does, and I was learning the word for basket, which is talucha. And the woman sounded like my aunt. So I reached out to my aunt and I said, "Hey, did you ever do any recordings for Cherokee Nation for the language program?" And she said, "I can't speak it." She said, "The words stick in my throat." And then she said, "The beatings." And those kind of stories make it clear that they made orphans out of children who had families. And that was the intention, was to destroy the fabric of Native families and take them away from culture and community that was actually really vital, and a culture that privileged community over the individual. And they saw that as being a bad thing. And so this project called As Seeds We Grow, Student Reflections on Resilience, incorporated artwork by a lot of students. And my daughter made some, and the language part is important. My daughter made some pieces that look like refrigerator magnets, kind of alphabet refrigerator magnets, except they're in Cherokee syllabary. And then she did some little magnets that look like poetry magnets in Cherokee. And the Cherokee language, in your language is where your cultural values, there are seeds of your cultural values in language. And so all of that came into play with this exhibit. And so other students also wrote pieces or they made weavings. There were ceramics. There were shawls that are orange and say "Every Child Matters," which honors the boarding school students. It was a really fantastic exhibit. And so we were really lucky to be able to go to that. So this poem is by me, and it's called My Native American Father, Cherokee Nation, 1988. When my father was a little boy, he was an Indian, But he went away to the BIA-funded boarding school for Native Americans, and they cut out the language and the heritage like a liar's tongue, so he would fit better into the white man's world. He went to college some and now makes $5.50 an hour with benefits. And he survived and never learned much about the people. I saw a photo of him once, a crew cut, a basketball photo, proper English. He won spelling contests and learned grammar better than I ever will, but he could only say pie and hello and Cherokee. I am my father's daughter, and I learned well.
You're listening to Books on the Bed, where I travel through the country asking our hosts, if I came to your town and stayed at your house, what books would you put on my bed? Each host will share 6 books for me to carry with me on the journey of my life. And I'm here to share those books with you. As we go, we're building a digital library with every book put on every bed across the country. And who knows, maybe someday, the world. We are trying to share as many diverse stories as possible to part a curtain between us and bring us closer to each other. We hope these books and conversations make a meaningful difference in your life. Thank you for listening and being with us on this journey. Part of the reason I wanted to start with those poems and this project is because, I spent a lot of time with authors' work and kept trying to figure them out without knowing them necessarily, just slowly, just absorb it, because I think the pressure of formulating just 8 questions for an interview is not what I want to do because it doesn't feel human. I think you just need to look at okay, what does this person wrote? Let's read it. What has this person done in their life? Let's learn about it. Where are they from? Let's learn about that place. And that's a months-long process, really, if you do it well. And if you really pay attention. And I'd read everything. I'd learned about where you were from. I talked to so many people. And also, everyone that I've talked to that knows you loves you. And that's how I knew this was going to be great, is that people speak with reverence in a certain way where it's just doubtless, And that's how people speak about you. So I just knew that you were going to be a good-hearted person. And so I've read your work, I meet these people, and then I find my way to this final project that I found on the internet, just as kind of one last-ditch effort to see maybe there's some poetry out there that you've written. And it just felt like a soul-aligning project for you. And what your work has been, not just as an author, but as an educator, as a human being, as a mother, it just made so much sense. And I really appreciate Elise doing it and bringing you in the fold, because it gave, I think, another added layer of power to this conversation and my excitement for it, because I just think you had said, I think in what you can do in writing is basically write a recipe for creating a better world. And I think that's what you do. And these authors that I visited, you are now part of that collection of people that makes me want to wake up in the world and just say, I'm going to give my best to this day. Your books have that kind of power. And so I really thank you.
Thank you
for writing and being who you are, because it makes our world stronger and gives it a better heart. And I think we need that so badly right now.
We do.
And just the connection back to your father and really just your ancestors. That's where it all comes from. And so I just thought that was such a powerful piece. And it says everything about what you've done over the course of the last few decades.
Thanks for finding it. I didn't realize it was out there. That's so cool.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah, I'm so glad. And how wild that Elise is now up the road and here in Arkansas. But because of what you've done for my life over the last couple of years, reading your books and getting to know you until actually getting to know you. We got to do our ceremony of gift giving, which was agonizing for me, as it is for you to pick the books on the bed.
That's funny.
So I couldn't stop it. I was I don't want to just get you horror, but I also don't want to I didn't want to put any limitations on what I might get you. No. So I was just trying, okay.
Oh, and these are beautifully wrapped.
Well, I got to give credit. Pearl's Books once again does the bow.
Oh, I love pearls.
I wrap neatly, but don't have bows.
Okay.
But this one has a bow.
Did Robin wrap these?
No, I forget who wrapped it. I should have asked her name. Okay. It was the first time I've met her. So you can open these briefly before we...
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, And so I have a first edition of Chooch Helped for you.
I love this
and
book.
this one is signed by Rebecca. I haven't signed it yet because I was going to see how you wanted me to sign it.
Yeah, I
so
love it.
that's a first edition of that.
Sweet.
So that's a sticker. That's not the printed on one. That's
Like
that's before we
real
won.
Deal.
Yeah. So that's for my set before we won.
Incredible.
And then this is a bookmark. And the word for snake is inada in Cherokee. And there's a author named, or there's a elder author. She's passed, Ruth Muskrat Bronson. She did a lot of work in education and for Native children. And she and I think it's Ella Deloria worked at Haskell Indian School, and they did a version of Midsummer Night's Dream. And she actually went to Mount Holyoke Seminary, and while she was there, she wrote a short story called The Serpent.
Oh, wow.
And so there's a book coming out soon, and I know I have a copy. It might be upstairs, called Fry Bread, or let's see, The Legendary Fry Bread Stand. Have you seen it? That's the new. It's kind of follow-up of Ancestor Approved.
Oh, okay.
And so the story I wrote in there was inspired by my Osage friends and my daughter, Anna Henry, and Elise's friendship, because they met at college.
Yeah.
And they had this ride or die friendship that they established there. Two Indian kids far from home. Elise's Osage, Anna's Cherokee, and people like Ruth Muskrat Bronson are the ones who ensured that Native students had access to education. And they really tried to lead the way in empowering those Native students. And then this is a bookmark that Rebecca had made before. So that's different from the ALA bookmarks. Those are the ones Rebecca had made before Rebecca won the Caldecott.
It's incredible. I mean, what an honor.
Anyway.
Truly, yeah. Like I said, I have a couple of copies that I want to sign, you to sign, so I can give them to my friends' children, and that I can have. Now I can have this one, so I can actually give the other one to another set of friends' children. So this is great.
Yes,
your book's going to be making rounds in the United States.
Good deal.
I love it.
Yeah, and I do have to take you upstairs to see the other bookshelves, but
no doubt.
My Heath called it my chooch altar is upstairs. So there's a cape, but there's also a book called When We Gather. And that one actually won the Oklahoma Book Award. So I'm really happy about both books. All right. Oh.
I didn't know if you'd...
I don't have this, but I wanted this.
It just came out last week.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was receiving it at work at the bookstore.
Oh, wow.
And I'd already gotten you other ones, but I was
almost everybody in here.
I need to add this to the list. It was like a sign, It couldn't have been more than 4 days ago that came into the books. Oh, yeah, because it came out Tuesday the 8th.
Oh, yeah. I love most of these authors.
Yeah. So then can you say the title in the...
Oh, Roots of My Fears, including stories by Gabino Iglesias, Haley Piper, Premi Muhammad. Haley Piper. So, yeah, there's some good ones here.
Yeah.
There's one I won't read, but that's fine. That's what Sharpies and razors are for.
Exactly.
This is gorgeous. I don't even want to open that because that's pretty. That looks like art.
And what's crazy is, believe it or not, because we forgot to put a bookmark in there before, unwrapped it and still wrapped it back in the same paper that well. I was like, gosh, they're talented.
Awesome.
I need to step my game up.
Yeah, right.
Like, I'm neat. I'm very good with the wrapping, but I need to start getting bows and other bells and whistles.
That's the kind of thing AI ought to be doing. I'm sorry. Oh, I haven't seen this. The Ghost Variations, 100 Stories by Kevin Brockmeyer.
So
this is beautiful.
Kevin is in Little Rock, and he is actually the episode that comes out on Books on the Bed this Wednesday.
Oh, okay, cool.
I interviewed him in June when I came to see Tony and Jen Fox. And there is one particular story that reminded me of, oh my God, what was the title? The Lens story that you wrote?
Oh,
that eventually,
Lens.
Yeah, it was just called Lens, right? Yeah. So whereas in this ghost story he tells, it's you put on two pairs of glasses, and then you can see ghosts in the room. And so there are a lot of stories in this collection I think you will appreciate, because Kevin's just really smart, imaginative, and he deals so much in the realm of what's like almost above humanity, like untouchable. Like he really reaches in his stories, not in a way that feels like he's trying too hard. It's just, I think he's really going for something deeper. And I think after having read Man-Made Monsters specifically, I was like, all right, there's some kinship here.
Oh, this is fun.
And Kevin's he's a great reader. So I think you're going to love this.
This is cool. I'm going to have to show this to him. I teach creative writing for the Institute for American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, creative writing 3 and 4. And so I like to show them all kinds of different containers for stories.
Highly recommend this one because it's such a unique.
Yeah. This is neat.
Like
I'm going to look for this guy at the next Northwest Arkansas book event.
He's a very generous person. He lives in Little Rock where he grew up, but then one semester a year he teaches at Iowa Writers Workshop. So it's kind of a cool.
And that's a really cool cover.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
But to do 100 stories,
yeah.
I'd never seen someone do that many micro stories. So it was just a cool project. And then that one story in particular stood out because of a connection to yours, but I think all of them in some way will speak to you and move you. It's a very, very good book.
I appreciate it.
This one's a little... It was mostly because we talked that you were listening to Natashi's episode at one point when we were... And I gave Tachi Jamila Minnick's book that is similar to this one in terms of Black communities that are...
Oh, nice.
They're trying to erase them.
Okay, yeah.
And there are people that are still trying to keep alive the memory. And I just felt like this family story would be one... complicated mother-daughter relationship, the author lives in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Or was born in Philadelphia, but there's so many Black families in the North that have their home places in Alabama or Georgia and Mississippi and Arkansas. I interviewed someone in St. Louis whose father's from Earl, Arkansas. So it's like, this story is really important because they're not technically there anymore, but they don't want that memory to die. Like they're still part of that place because of their heritage. So I just felt like, this will be a story you'd like.
Yeah. No, I'm excited about this. Octavia Butler, she said that, she didn't really, her family didn't talk about why they left and moved to the North. And, it was just too painful. And so for so long, Black writers weren't able to write about it, sometimes because it was too painful and sometimes because people weren't allowing or listening to stories that they could tell, and people were taking their stories and telling it for them. And so it's been really beautiful to see something like Sinners, which, is, and they talk about Little Rock. They talk about Arkansas. They talk about, going from, the South to Chicago. And that's just like, I think, the world's most perfect movie. Because there's so many great lines.
Of course,
about,
I love that.
The kid talking to the brother and saying, well, I heard, it's a lot freer up there. And he's like, it's the North. Then he's like, don't let him fool you. Don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
And so there are several race massacres here in Arkansas that people don't know about. And, every time you pass a road and it says sunset or sundown, I mean, it's pretty clear that that's the edge of town. And if you were African-American, you had to be past that line before dark. And it was life or death. Yeah. And Lovecraft Country, portrays that so well in the beginning. And so, there's places like I drive through Prairie Grove and there's Sundowner Road. And apparently, there was a billboard here, and the billboard was up until the 80s, but it had been covered. But apparently up until the 80s, people still knew that billboard used to have a picture of a black donkey on it, and said basically, don't let the sun go down on you. And that was over here in Winslow. And when you're out here now, you rarely see African-American people out in rural areas in Arkansas still. And we're only 35 minutes from Fayetteville. Yeah. And so the more things change, the more you realize that a lot of things haven't changed and that it's going really slowly. And unfortunately, I think we're seeing some major setbacks due to the lack of empathy that people seem to see as weakness or whatever. But
And I think reading is an important part of understanding, but it shouldn't be the end of it.
yes.
And so, Ayanna Mathis, The Unsettled,
Okay.
is the book.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I didn't say.
But I think this is exactly why I shared this with you, because I know that you'd appreciate just given, I mean, even the intro that Elise wrote and them including on the project at Fort Lewis, the December 1889 like proclamation for the school to be built. They called it the inculcation of patriotism in Indian schools. And the Indians they use the word destined to become absorbed into national life, not as Indians, but as Americans. I mean, you could not have a more poignant thing that happened over a century ago, 150 years ago, and that's what they want to do. They still want to do it. White people want to take anything out that isn't reflective of them. They want to kill it, erase it, whatever they can do, suppress the history. And I think any books that we can get in people's hands about communities that would be lost to time if you didn't know about it. You know, there's so many places that it's not even just about like the big ones that were like thriving neighborhoods or communities. Like there's even, I mean, it's everywhere, but you have to know where to look.
Yeah.
And so many people are writing great stuff about it. Yeah. You have to be curious enough to know like, okay, this can't be it. This can't just be the history of this place. We know better. But anyway, this book just really struck me as something that I think you'd appreciate the lens she took.
I'm excited about
what
that
happens when you feel so apart from a place because you didn't grow up there, you were born in a different region, but yet you still want it. You are a part of it, and you want it to survive. You want the memory and the legacy. Anyway, so yeah, I could go on and on. But I thought these books were good choices for what you write and what you read.
Very fun.
Yeah, I'm excited for you to, and hopefully you get to meet Kevin.
Yeah, I'm going to look for him. Northwest Arkansas Book Fest is coming up pretty soon. So I'm wondering if he'll be around.
I hope so.
I'll have to check.
I hope so. But at any rate, so before we get to the books on the bed that you chose, one thing I do want to talk about is related to the poems that you read and that project and the way that you've shaped your writing life. Because you are clearly someone who wants to take on the legacy of the ancestors. I mean, you write about it at the end of Man-Made Monsters with one of the best lines I've ever read at the end of a book, where it's on me now. Like that whole paragraph. I mean, that's where I was like choking up. Like, I mean, it's so true. Right? I mean, no one's going to just hold your hand and bring you along. Like, you've got it inside of you because of who you are and where you come from and who you come from. And then Elise said the same thing with her father.
Yeah,
so
that's
just
what it's like. That echoes, right? And
but it took you a long time to become a writer, at least with published books. There's many ways that you can carry forth a legacy. There's many ways that you can take what you've learned from ancestors and put it into practice. And you've done it as an educator, as a mother, but in writing in particular. I mean, I was surprised to learn how late you started because you're so good. But then again, I was like, maybe that makes sense because you've had more time becoming who you are, that like these books just feel like a direct reflection of who you are inside. Like there's no lying, there's no posturing. I was just like, gosh, this feels like someone who knows who they are and what they want to write about, what they want to share. I'm curious why you chose children's books and horror. Or if you like it, just to label it, those as the ways that you are going to write the history of your people and hopefully inspire people you really want people to take ownership of their own history. So I'm just curious how that became the avenue that you were going to do this work and live this way.
See, and now you're making me want to change my books.
Oh, gosh.
So I loved ghost stories when I was a kid. And I was always writing. Actually, you've done the research. So I wrote fan fiction in high school about Duran Duran and Def Leppard and Billy Idol for my friends, right? And they would tell me what they want, and they would pick out their characters and name their characters. And, it was, of course, it's like, 3 models living in a dome house, and, because it's the 1980s. And so I was writing to appeal to them. And I read everything. My mom, and I loved ghost stories, though. And so when I was 4, I got shot in the eye with a BB gun. And so I lost the lens in my left eye. I came from a family that liked sports a lot. My dad was a basketball player, and my brother played football, and my sister played soccer, and I was going to play softball. And the doctor, we had to get a physical, and the doctor was like, I really think that's a bad idea. She's only got one eye. And if she takes a softball to the other eye, it's a cane and a dog for the rest of her life. And that spooked me. So I played softball with a glove in front of my face for one season. And way out in the outfield. And,
you're like,
yeah. And so that was kind of the end. That was the second grade was the end of my softball career.
Aww.
And what's funny is my gym teacher was named Tyrone Woodard. His sister is Alfre Woodard, the actress. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
So anyway, he was the best gym teacher ever. And his daughter went to school there, too. She was in my grade named Tyra Woodard. So anyway, so that's neither here nor there.
Yeah,
but
that's
it's just
a
an
funny
aside.
connection. Yeah.
And he was wonderful. He was my favorite teacher there. And anyway, so that was the end of sports for me for the most part. And so I would still have to go to all the practices for my brother and my sister. So I always had a book with me. Always had a book with me. I mean, and so, thank God we didn't have cell phones then, because I probably just would have been playing Candy Crush or something stupid.
Yeah.
With all my time. Instead, I was reading. And so I was, being in other worlds, and I was seeing other people's stories. I'm actually working on a middle grade novel the other day, right now, middle grade historical fiction set in 1968. And I do have like several books that I've reacquired, or, I checked them out for my from my elementary school library. I had wonderful librarians.
Yeah.
And they'd set aside the ghost books for me as soon as they came in, because they knew that's what I wanted to read. But this book, The Ghost Next Door, I would check this out like, I don't know, once a month. I mean,
wow,
I'm like,
really?
Am I the only person who ever reads it? Because it was always there, and I would always check it out. And so
that is worn.
I don't know. Do you know the author Willie Folk St. John?
No, I've never
Southern.
Heard.
And anyway, and so it takes place. It's in Georgia, outside of Atlanta, and it's The Ghost Next Door. And so I realized the other day, I was like, I am writing The Ghost Next Door. So I'm writing a Cherokee version of it.
That's amazing.
Which harkens back to the period of time where, similar to Killers of the Flower Moon, Native people were being murdered and separated from their land. The 5 tribes went through the same thing the Osage did, but on a much different scale. It was individual, whereas the Osage, because they held their mineral rights in common, the whole tribe was targeted. But with the 5 tribes, Choctaw, Cherokee, Chickasaw, Seminole Creek, that we had already been forced to undergo allotment. And so those mineral rights were broken up. And so the way allotment was done, you would get, if you got land and it looked particularly worthless, it turned out that was land more likely to have oil. And so the guardianship program was set up. Indian Territory became part of Oklahoma. And as soon as that happened, Oklahoma started changing the laws. They had promised that when they became a state, they would still protect Native interests and take care of the trust lands. And as soon as they became a state, they started changing all the laws, and they had a guardianship program. And so there were people whose names are on museums in Tulsa, and Sand Springs, who they might be the guardian of up to 50 children or 50 adults who were full bloods, and so in order to extract the resources from their land, and often extract the land as well, and sometimes extract the lives from these people in order to steal what they had. The wealthier you were, the more likely you were to get murdered. The more likely you were, you weren't going to make it to adulthood. Not unlike the Osage. There's actually a book by Charles Redcorn called A Pipe for February.
Okay.
And it's about the same period. And he's Osage. So I recommend that book ahead of the one that glorifies the FBI.
I'm going to write that down so I can share it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure I could get it at Talking Leaves.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. So anyway, but so he had written about it before that book ever came out. And then so The Ghost Next Door is it's about friendship, and it's about two girls, but it's also about a mystery, and it's about, grief, and it's about losing someone you love and then going on and learning to love somebody else, whether it's a new child, a new granddaughter, a new niece, or whatever. You've read Man-Made Monsters. I mean, there's a lot of stories dealing with grief, right? There's a lot of navigating grief. And so I was always writing, but two things were going on. One, what I was writing wasn't what publishers wanted from Indian writers. They had a very specific criteria. And so, and I wasn't meeting it because I'm stubborn. I'm going to do what I want to do. But I can also say I am grateful that I did not publish early, because I'm afraid I would have had a lot of damage to feel like I had to undo, or I would have been riding a wave of things that maybe I didn't believe anymore. I used to tell my writing friends, I'd be like, I got another rejection, no powwow, no peyote, no ponies. So I guess,
the essential P's.
Yeah, I don't have the 3 P's. So, oh, well, I guess I won't get published this year. And so also, I mean, I have to remind myself, because I'm super behind on stuff right now, on contracts and stuff. But so in Man-Made Monsters, there's a story. Which one is it? It's not an unfairy story. That's why I can't remember it. It's an unfairy story. And so, so I was supposed to have it in, I think, on a Friday. And I wrote my editor and I said, I have a friend, Cherokee friend, who's a speaker, and he's grew up speaking Cherokee. And so I said, I'm going to go help him cook this weekend for this powwow. So it's going to be next week, and I will get these edits back in next week.
Yeah.
I hung out with him, and we talked, and, we talked about stories, and we talked about, we just talked. But one thing he said to me changed one really important line in that story. And I thought, if I had turned the edits in on Friday, that wouldn't have been there, and it would have gone to publication. It would have been, the files would have been in China. So, but because I had, decided to wait until that next Monday, the story I'm happy with it. I mean, that's the most important
thing.
There's very little, I mean, of course you're going to be editing, tweaking all along.
Yeah.
I mean, every time I stand up and read, I'm like, oh, I don't like that. Or let me change this now. I know it's already published, but whatever. And so, but there's, as far as the content and, I'm really happy with those, and it was 21 years or more in the making. I mean, I wrote Maria Most Likely shortly after. Oh, no, it was right before 9/11. So I was pregnant with my middle child, and I wrote Maria Most Likely then. And often the way I would do short stories is I would sit down after everybody went to bed, and I would write. And I'd write till like 3 a.m. I'd write till it was done. I rarely stopped when I was writing short stories. And so I'd write till it was done, or I thought it was done. And then between 2001 and then when it actually got accepted for publication, the manuscript got accepted, hardly anything changed. And that was a story that I had sent out, and it got rejected. It won an award at the Dallas Public Library and the adult.
That's right.
It won, but I still couldn't get it published.
It's a great story. And
Thank you.
Publishing doesn't always want the best stories.
No.
They want the stories that will sell the most.
Well, and they they want a specific they wanted a specific kind of Indian.
Yeah. Just like I was talking with Robin about, they want a specific type of Black experience.
Yes, they do. Yes.
Like, as a Black writer, you feel less freedom to write the stories you want, because it's like, okay, but where's it going to go? And so it's like, do I write somewhere something that's going to go somewhere, something that I really want to write? And I think that's an unfair choice to have to make, but it is what it is. But I'm glad someone recognized it.
Well, and I was really lucky. I mean, I've been really lucky or blessed, or it's not up to me. It's, the universe. So Laura Pegram at Quelly Literary Journal, I met her years ago, and She was, do you know Quelly?
Mhm.
Okay. So they were doing their first Color of Children's Books conference. Debbie Reese had suggested me and a few other Native writers for panels. And I had been talking to Debbie, online about, like, I was watching Debbie's work and I was watching, what she was talking about. And, it all resonated. The books that I would read and that didn't really click and didn't feel right, she made me feel like I wasn't crazy. And so, because I was like, yes, this book does not feel like it's written by a person with a Native experience. And so, it's written by somebody with a fairy tale for a genealogy. It's nothing but stereotypes. And at some point, I finally realized, and I grew up not having those books. I didn't have books by Cherokee writers for children. There weren't picture books by Cherokee writers for children that I knew of. Now, I am going to mention one in a minute. But for the most part, they weren't there. And then, when I'm having kids 30 years later, the books are still not there. I'm approaching 50 and they're not out there. And so I start, probably when I was in my 40s, I started writing like picture books, because I had little kids. And so I'm writing and sharing them with them and sending them to a friend of mine to see what she thinks. And, I just realized at some point, if I want to be a writer and this is what I want to do, and I will be doing it with every intention of not shaming my ancestors, not embarrassing myself in front of them, then maybe I need to be the one going ahead and trying to do this.
Heck yeah.
Whether it gets published or not. And, and I was looking at self-publishing too, and whatever would get the stories out there. And so Laura was she was an advocate for me. She was very supportive when I think it was the 200th anniversary of Frankenstein was happening. And of course, Frankenstein was, a seminal work for me. I mean, she's 18 years old and has lost a baby or two and is a genius, right? She's a product of her family, right? She's Mary Wollstonecraft's daughter. She's Godwin's daughter. She's like, she's sitting at the table with people who are discussing everything.
Yeah.
Godwin was really interested in like what children should be reading, and what, how do you make a human? And then Mary extends that to what happens when you do make a human and you fail that human, right? So anyway, I went to IAI with the intention of leaving there in the next 2 years with a finished manuscript because all I ever wanted to do from second grade on was be a writer. And then I got there. And I started writing vampire stories and werewolf stories. And it's just like,
of course
if you've been on the IAI campus, I don't know why, but it was just, that's what I started doing. And so I was talking to Manuel Gonzalez, who was my first mentor there.
Cool. And
I said, I really wanted to leave with a book. I really wanted to leave with a book. And I was like, and now I'm writing these werewolf stories and these vampire stories. And I don't know where they're coming from, but that's what I'm writing. And of course, that's what I loved to read when I was a kid. And actually, I still love them. Yeah. Anyway, let's be honest. Anyway, Anne Rice, Interview with a Vampire, carried that around all through high school, right? And college. Anyway, Manuel said, right where the heat is. And I was like,
ooh, that's a good one. I haven't heard that. Dang, that's fire.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah. So,
wow.
So by the time I left IAI, I had like 14 weird fiction stories because they didn't fit like, they're not pure vampire. They're vampire stories with Cherokee people in them. And you're finding out that the vampires are maybe not necessarily the monsters. Yeah. It's the people who are taking your homes and committing genocide in order to have your stuff. And
and I think the move to have it's a family story. I mean, for how many generations did
it does 10. I did 10. Yeah. Yep.
So it was a unique book for me. And I was like, I'm going to remember this forever. It was one of those interruptions in your reading list where, I like literary fiction and poetry and, I read pretty broadly, but nothing like that. And so it was just really exciting. And I could tell that's where the heat was, as a reader. And that is really important. You need to know the writer was like in it.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was no doubt about that. So anyway.
Yep. And so it was fun. I mean, it was super fun. And actually during those 2 years, I also wrote Mary and the Trail of Tears, which was not fun. So Mary and the Trail of Tears is historical fiction. Tracy Sorrell had suggested me for it. And I didn't want to do it because I had been saying over and over in panels, good God, can we please have a story after 1839?
That's true. I mean,
everything is like we're extinct after 1839. I'm like, and here I am. I'm going to write an 1839 story. And it's going to be the Trail of Tears. And it doesn't have peyote or powwows, but it's got some ponies. And so I was like, oh, but then I looked at what was out there. And Tim Tingle had written some books, and he's Choctaw, and he had written about their march, and they came through Arkansas. Mm-hmm. But there weren't Cherokee writers writing books for children about the Trail of Tears.
Yeah.
And so I recognized that if I was going to do it, I had to do it right, and that I could do it right. And so I did. But that was a really hard book. I mean, I had a lot more fun writing, football player werewolves than I did writing about something that was adjacent to my family's own experience. Because my family, I did have family around Echota, and I did have old settler family that came, that probably were not far from here, probably right down there in that valley, in 1818.
Well, and you had gone back east for a trip, right? Like you had gone to...
I had 1 week. I got my advance, loaded up the family on Friday of spring break, and me and Anna and my oldest was at the University of North Texas. So, and they couldn't go with us because their break was a different time. But Anna, my middle daughter, and my youngest child, AJ, and my husband, we loaded up in the car on Friday and started driving. And we drove through Arkansas, and we followed... I can't remember which route for the Trail of Tears. I guess it would, I'm not good at geography. Southern route of the Trail of Tears. And then we went to, Tennessee, saw Ross's Landing. Anyway, we stopped several places, got to New Echota in Georgia, took tons of pictures because I knew I couldn't write that book without walking on the land where my ancestors had been. Because I wouldn't have gotten it right. But that was a hard book. That was a hard book to write. And, that I needed some healing after that one. So the vampires were that was healing. And so, and I had loved Interview with a Vampire because it was 200 years. Yeah. And I stood back and went, that book's got some stuff going on at the beginning of it. I mean, Louis's got a plantation. That's why he's targeted by Lestat, because he's got money and he's got access to victims. And so I was like, what an opportunity if you had a vampire, if you had a Cherokee vampire who sees 200 years and every generation and what every generation is encountering that's trying to wipe them out. And so it was a fantastic framework to put that story in. Anyway. Yeah. No, I think I don't even know if I answered a question.
Of course. Yeah. I think because, I just love the many ways people become writers. And yet how some of it just feels like was always going to happen. I mean, even hearing you reading these books as a child and, then seeing the stories you wrote, it felt natural. And I love when that connection just feels so right when you read a book. I was talking about this with a friend who wrote a story collection in Asheville, and she came and did an event at City Lights. And the best way I could describe it is it just felt like a natural book for you specifically to write.
Yes.
And that's how I felt about Art Thieves, Man-Made Monsters, Choo-Choo, all this.
I was the only one who could write those.
And it reminded me of the question that that has reverberated throughout this project since I met Ebony Lumumba, who's at Jackson State. And, she just sat there and said, if not me, who? If not me, then who?
Yeah.
And that's the question you asked yourself. But instead of just saying, well, I'll wait, it's like, no, I have to do this. And I remember reading this in particular that I knew you would mention some of this because it just feels like you had to write these books, not even just out of want or desire. I mean, it was like you said it would take someone asked a question that was about Indigenous characters. I don't remember exactly what it was, but your answer was it would take a conscious effort to remove Indigenous characters from my work, specifically Cherokee. I'm Cherokee. My kids are Cherokee. My cultural community and nation is Cherokee. Here's the question. Without them, how would I speak? These books feel like they came from that question. How else would I speak? How could I speak? And then you say, like, I forget which writer said that if there are no alcoholics in your native story, it's not realistic. And that's crap. We aren't defined by trauma or poverty any more than anyone else. And I think this is what's important about the way you look at writing is it shouldn't be history. We need contemporary stories that definitely integrate tradition. Of course, that's going to be a part of it. But people need to see us living now. And that just, I think, is what made the book so powerful, is because that was clearly a very important thing for you, because you've been a kid that didn't have those books.
And you mentioned the art thieves. And so the art thieves for me is sort of like my template for what do we have to do now to get the world we want in the future? How do we take care of our chosen family? How do we take care of our friends? How do we take care of our community? Because we have to do it now. We can't wait for someone else to do it. And so
you were writing the recipe.
Yes.
How to create the world that now we need to survive.
Yeah. No.
And here it is. Yeah. So we can all do it in our own way. And I loved the art thieves. And in fact, something you mentioned about like learning to love again, overcoming grief. It fits really well with what I'm going to have you read at the end of this interview. Because there was one particular chapter that just wrecked me, laid me out about that kind of love and giving love a chance always. So anyway, but it sounds like you picked up one of the books already for the books on the bed. Do you just want to go into that?
Yeah.
Let's
Is
start.
that okay?
Absolutely. It's best when it happens naturally. So
all right.
First of all, I love how old this book is.
This book, okay, so
tell us what it is.
This is the Golden Treasury of Songs and Lyrics, published by Macmillan's Pocket Classics. And let's see if I've got a date in this. 1861. Whoa. My mom had old books. My mom was a reader. She had all of her books on the top shelf of a closet. A lot of them were wrapped in plastic, but this one was one that I broke into and took out. And I can honestly, I actually got kind of weepy a while ago. My mom is alive, but I don't know that I've ever thanked her for giving me a love of reading. If she was sitting around chain smoking, she had a book in her hand and she was reading. And so I would say that this one, this is where I fell in love with words. And it had some pieces by Shakespeare, but this was the first poem I ever memorized. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and night is in her essence and her eyes. Oh, aspect. Meet in her aspect and her eyes. Thus mellowed to that tender light which heaven to gaudy day denies. One shade the more, one ray the less, had half impaired the nameless grace, which waves in every raven tress or softly lightens o'er her face. Where thoughts serenely sweet express how pure, how dear their dwelling place. And on that cheek and o'er that brow, so soft, so calm, yet eloquent, the smiles that win, the tints that glow, but tell of days in goodness spent, a mind at peace with all below, a heart whose love is innocent. And so that was when I fell in love with Lord Byron.
Woo.
And so inevitably, that leads to Mary Shelley and Frankenstein and Man-Made Monsters. And
wow.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to say. So Man-Made Monsters, I always knew what the title of the book was going to be. And I always knew that Man-Made Monsters was going to be my Frankenstein story. And so at the 200th anniversary, like it was passing, I wrote Laura and I was like, I really, really, really want to see this story published before the end of the year. Because I'd sent it out and it got rejected. And I was like, I really want to see it. And she said, okay, well, let me work with you. Or I would love to work with you on it. I would love to publish it. And so Laura Pegram is one of the best editors. She was also the one who introduced me to Nick Thomas. And the fact that Nick Thomas read The first story in Man-Made Monsters, An Old-Fashioned Girl, I think. And so I don't know if you know that title harkens back to Louisa May Alcott who wrote An Old-Fashioned Girl? Anyway, so because that's all the stuff I read in my little Baptist library. We had the weirdest Baptist library for a darn near Southern Baptist church. That's where I found ghost stories. And
Wow.
we had an amazing librarian in this. It was pretty much a Southern Baptist church. And so it was Emmanuel Baptist Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And we had an amazing library.
Incredible.
And so I would go in there and read while my parents were in their classes. And, but then I take that and I run it through my horror blender. I was telling someone the other day, it's like I'm always out of this, in my peripheral vision, there's always something going on. So yeah, I don't know.
I love those origin stories of life. I mean, think about how long that book's been in your life.
Yeah.
Inside you. I mean, like when you read those sort of formative, even if it's one poem, they're with you forever. My life philosophy really, James McBride said it in his latest book, is everything got everything to do with everything. Like if you really think about it.
Yeah.
Your stories come from all these places and they all connect and they shape you. And then you're like, all right, this is what I'm going to put out with all that I've read and all the people that have influenced me. And I'm glad it's important to thank people that helped you learn to love to read because I think some kids don't get that. And I think it's a shame. Or maybe it's film too, right? I mean, whatever influences artistically.
Stories.
Could be paintings, but a love of art. Yeah. To just witness that in such a casual fashion.
And we are stories, right?
Yeah.
Every human being is a story. Every time you lose a person, you lose a book.
Yeah.
And, the human library needs lots of us. And so Laura actually is the one who connected me with Nick Thomas. And so here's this 6'8" editor who's white, who grew up in New Jersey, loves The Clash. So we had actually he has a lot in common musically with my husband, but we had a lot of music stuff in common too. And he read, An Old-Fashioned Girl, and he said, I'd love to talk to you about it. And I didn't see the email because it went to my spam. And this went on for like a month. And Laura, and part of it was I was presenting at Quelly, and part of the deal was if you presented, you also could, if you were trying to sell a book or wanted to talk to someone about a manuscript, you got to for free or, as part of my scholarship or whatever. And so she had, I said, I don't know who I want to meet with. She said, well, how about Nick Thomas? She said, I think he's a really good man. He's a really good person. I think he's in it for the right reasons. And I was like, okay, great. And then Quelly happened. I never heard from him. And I was like, well, it was free, whatever. And so then, a month goes by because that was April. And then in May, my friend Melanie Archuleta, who I met at IAI, calls and she said, check your spam. I sent you something for Mother's Day. And I was like, oh, okay. So I go and find the gift card she sent me. And then I find all these emails from Nick Thomas. And the final one is like, well, if you haven't already sold this, I'm really, really interested. And I was like,
oh my gosh.
Oh, wow. And I have no chill. So I immediately wrote him back and I'm like, it was in my spam. Sorry. I would love to hear what you think. And because I really was at the point where, I was sending it out and people were like, who are you? You're not anyone. You haven't won anything big. Nobody wants a collection of your short stories. And I was like, well, I don't think it's quite just a collection.
Yeah.
And I had an agent who's like, well, I don't really see a theme here. And I'm like, what? I'm like, have you read any short story collections lately? Because I'm pretty sure I've got way more of a theme than many of them I've read.
That's literally a ridiculous thing to say.
Yeah. So I was like, okay.
The things you got to deal with going through that process.
So Nick saw it. He saw it, and he saw me, and he saw the potential for the story, and he was the best possible editor I could have had.
Yeah.
And he's also the editor for Chooch Helped. And again, that's a story that I had sent out, and it got rejected. Nobody wanted Chooch Helped. So, and here we are. So
Caldecott Award.
And so Laura was really important. And then actually I wrote an essay about her. I'll be right back.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a collection called Allies So I wrote an essay basically, and it's basically a love letter to Laura because
I love it.
She has done so much to bring people to the table who, she built the table. she built the chairs. She made sure she started out doing, it was voices from the diaspora, the Caribbean, from the African diaspora.
Yeah.
But then she reached out to Debbie Reese and made sure that she made space for Native writers. And it's changed publishing in a really big way. Tracy Sorrell was there. I met her there. Brian Young. Marcy Rendon was there. See, Angeline Bully came there. I could go on and on and on with the Native writers who got a little bit of a start there. Love is attention. And so that kind of love is super powerful. And we need so much of that. I mean,
it's what keeps things moving. When people see the effort you're putting in and you're welcoming, you're building space and giving opportunities. I mean, that's as important as the art itself. It needs somewhere to go, and people need to believe in themselves, and they need someone to believe in them. I was talking this with Robin too. I mean, we kind of ran the whole gamut of topics, but just how important it is for someone to recognize, when someone reads your work and you feel like someone gets me, they know me, they saw me, they heard me, whatever you want to say is this is an important moment. And that's irreplaceable as an artist to have that feeling where it's finally.
Yeah. But what I've come to realize too, though, is I hope that I never take for granted when I'll have young women, young Native women who have read Man-Made Monsters. I'll meet them and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm fangirling right now." And it's I hope I never take for granted because really that's not about me. And it's not even about the book I wrote. It's about the book they read. And it spoke to their experience and it spoke to their heart. They created their own book when they read that. Yeah. And so, and I do try and remind them of that, but I'm so grateful for it because these were stories I would have loved to have had. I don't know how different I would have been if I had had stories by Cherokee writers. Oh, the one exception I was going to say was Where the Red Fern Grows.
Oh, yeah.
Wilson Rawls. I mean, he's Cherokee. And so, I mean, Cherokees we've got a history. I mean, you got John Ridge and writing the first basically Western kind of pulp novel. And so, I don't know. We like words. I mean, look at Sequoia. Look at, creating who creates a syllabary on their own of 85 characters that can speak the whole language. Who does that?
I'm telling you, when
Cherokee genius does that. That's who. So
I will never forget that day at the museum in Tahlequah. Ever. I will never. I'm alone. I'm in this exhibition with the history of this language. And I'm like, this is fucking crazy. It's incredible. And I actually any book that can help people understand the story of the Cherokee language and that syllabary, it's you need to put it out there because it's just remarkable. But then all of you are carrying it forth, this thing is you keep the writing tradition alive, you do it in your own way. And that's how people, and I'm not surprised people come up to you, especially reading that book. But yeah, that's an important moment as a writer too. It's not about glory, but it's about you affected someone. Or at least whatever they experienced was meaningful enough for them to say it. That's so cool. And that's why you do it.
And one of the questions you asked was, why writing for children? And, so for The Art Thieves, which is a young adult novel, what I say is I write for everybody, but I try and keep 12-year-old me or the 16-year-old me in the forefront of my brain and write in a way that wouldn't harm a 12-year-old Native girl. That wouldn't harm a 16-year-old Native girl, that wouldn't make someone so despondent they want to die. Because words have power. And so I was doing an event in Bentonville at a high school, and a young woman came up to me, and I was there talking about Man-Made Monsters, and they were reading it, I think, in a class or book club. And a young girl came up to me and she said, "I've read The Art Thieves twice." And I was like, "No way." I'm like, "It just came out." And I was like, "Really?"
That's awesome.
And I said,
And it was a writers conference at Benton. They do it's like Writers West or something at Bentonville High School. It's amazing what those teachers are doing over there in Bentonville with writers. And they have a writing conference. And so it's a day when all the rest of the students are off. They don't have to be there. And so if they're there, it's because they want to be, they want to create. They're creators. And so it's a really cool program. And I said, well, what are you working on? What are you writing? And she said, well, me and my girlfriend are working on a short story together. And I was like, oh, that I wrote The Art Thieves for you, right?
That's so cool. I mean, that's the moments. Those are the moments that matter to see that, this is who I was thinking of. I think filling a void that is there, it can feel like a lot of pressure, but what a great responsibility to have that you wrote these books now, thinking of yourself, but really yourself is children now that are looking for something like The Art Thieves that is going to be a story that they recognize themselves in, and then they get to meet the author and be like, hey, look, I mean, God, you're amazing. I mean,
they were awesome.
Oh, that's
they
so
were great.
cool.
And I mean, you say this, I mean, this is making me think is like, when I'm writing, I'm feeling an emptiness in me. And that's what they're responding to.
Yeah, man. Goosebumps. That's, I mean, truly. Like, oh gosh, that's amazing. And it started with that old book.
Yes,
like,
it started with
and your mother.
Book and my mom reading all the time.
Oh, are we doing a switch out here?
No, remember I told you I'm going for 7.
Okay.
7 is a sacred number. Okay.
Okay. So what do you got next?
All right. So next I'm going to go with, I forgot.
That's okay.
All right.
No rules here.
All right. So the next book.
I knew it.
You knew this. It was going to be Conquest of Texas, Ethnic Cleansing in the Promised Land, 1820 to 1875 by Gary Clayton Anderson. So I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I realized when I wrote Mary and the Trail of Tears, I didn't know as much about the Trail of Tears as I thought I did. And then we moved to Texas when I was around 30, and I wasn't even aware that there were Cherokees in Texas at one point. That included Chief Bowles. And if somebody doesn't make a movie about him, I don't know, because he's amazing.
Yeah.
And so it's the history of, ethnic cleansing in the Promised Land. And so, let's see, it says on the back, this is not your grandfather's history of Texas. Portraying 19th century Texas as a cauldron of racist violence, Gary Clayton Anderson shows that the ethnic warfare dominating the Texas frontier can best be described as ethnic cleansing. So I start reading this, and I can say that an old-fashioned girl was born from the images of what happened to the Cherokees when they were massacred outside of what's now Dallas. And I didn't know anything about that until I moved there. And a woman named Peggy Larney is, I think she's Creek and Seminole. I think. And she was head of the American Indian Education Department at Dallas. And so I was there. And so, they'd have meetings for the American Indian Ed program. And then every summer there'd be an American Indian Ed summer camp. And so since I was a teacher in Dallas, I was invited, obviously. My kids were invited, obviously. But then I was also invited to be a teacher. And you drag your kids out of bed during the summer at 7:00 or whatever, and they hate you and you don't know why you're doing it. And then your kid goes off and does an indigenous food program at Fort Lewis College. I couldn't have foreseen that. Yeah. And I'm super grateful. And like Elise, all you can do is plant seeds, and then we'll see how they grow. But Conquest of Texas really opened my eyes to so much that was erased and just what was going on. I mean, so there were treaties. And then there was a push to basically get those treaties invalidated by ignoring them. You would tell people, oh, yeah, these are your boundaries. And then you would also encourage settlers to incur to violate those boundaries. And so, I mean, that's the same thing that happened in what we now call Georgia. The Cherokee were there and they were terrorized. You would leave your house and come back and somebody else would be in it and with a gun, and you had no place to go. And so I did not know the history of Native people in Texas in the way that I understood it after reading Conquest of Texas. And so this book was really, really, and he's a professor at OU.
Yeah.
This book was really, I would say that this book sort of clarified what I was trying to do in my head with man-made monsters.
Wow.
And I would say Alma was born.
Yeah.
Alma is a baby of Conquest of Texas and Interview with a Vampire. How do you share that information in a way that teaches, and I'm not even going to say entertains, but it teaches, and it's also rich and it's also accurate. It's true. It's check my facts. These things happened. Someone walked up to Chief Bowles when he was, and just shot him in the back of the head or whatever. And, he's 80 years old on the battlefield. I
think this is an important point because you've talked about this in interviews before and all of us experience it, but there is no one experience of a tribe. And certainly across this country, you could just look up any book about Native people in any region and you're going to be like, I knew none of this. And that's intentional. But with Chief Bowles, I was never going to learn about that in Ohio as a high schooler.
Yeah. Yeah.
So really, you have to kind of get lucky, but also be curious enough to get lucky. And that's an important story to share of what happened to him, but really just all of Texas is quite representative of the violence that it took to remove people and establish white dominance. It's like no shock that Texas is the way it is now.
Yeah.
That's how it always has been.
Yeah. And a tribe like the Lipan Apache helped the Texians, because their enemies were the Comanches and, other Apaches. And it didn't pay off well. Whereas up in Blackfeet territory, the Crow helped the federal government and they got the best land. So it was just a crapshoot. I can't imagine having to make those choices. I grew up reading Anne Frank and I would have never foresaw people in America being proud of being nationalists.
Yeah.
I never saw that coming. But one thing I think it makes extremely clear is when the Supreme Court says, well, if you're brown and you don't speak English, we're free to pull you over and forget due process and all that. But what that also does is when people tell you, oh, my grandma was a full blood and she escaped the Trail of Tears. No, she didn't. Because if she was a full blood, she spoke Cherokee, she was brown. And as soon as someone caught her, she was going to Indian territory. Okay, it didn't happen. And so, the Eastern Band's an exception, but they were also a sort of, they were a different group. They were an organized group.
Yeah.
But as an individual, if you were on your own, you weren't going to make it. Yeah. And you were also, if you're abandoning your tribe, really, you're no longer Cherokee anyway. And so, because it's you're a citizen. You're taking care of your community.
Yeah.
Why would you go and be by yourself with people and you can't even speak the language? We were in it together. and that's, so now you can see how that was very unlikely.
Yeah.
Because here we are again.
Well, again, we're trying to absorb people as Americans, right? The inculcation of patriotism is it's a sin, it's a sickness, it's a horrific way to look at the world. And I think but if you just look at our history, it's like, can we be surprised, really? This is what so much of our daily lives was built upon, was that view that no matter if it's, I mean, it's not real, right? The idea of an American and that you're going to be that. It's just that in order for us to establish dominance and control over this country and its people and its resources, there can be no dissent. So in some ways, it's like, I mean, yes, it's horrifying with how much progress we've made, that it seemed like we were a country that was getting smarter, being more humane, not completely, but in some ways you saw like
learning our history.
But now it's like we need to remember the just catastrophic damage that the old way of America, had inflicted upon so many people. It's like, how can you forget that, But anyway, I mean, we could go on and on because, but I think that's
also,
why this book is important.
Yeah, and also just like, I mean, for people to say that empathy is weak, it's like you're insane. Okay, because we're all connected, whether you like it or not. Yeah. If I sneeze on you, you're going to catch what I got. Even the abuse of animals in farming and stuff, that all impacts you.
Yeah.
It impacts your water. It impacts, zoonotic diseases are a real thing. And it's because you're not taking care of the animals right. And so we're all connected, whether we like it or not. So really, the most selfish thing is to take care of each other because that's the only way you're going to win.
Yeah.
Otherwise, everybody loses eventually.
What you write about a lot in the Art Thieves, too, it's like reflecting how we treat each other well and how we treat the earth. I mean, it's the only way. It is the only way. And so I think that's why wearing the T-shirt, of Rebecca Jim, I think that story, my friend Catherine Savage, I learned about Rebecca Jim because she had met her, wrote about it in this book, Ground Glass, because they both grew up in places that were poisoned by industry. Catherine, a white woman in North Minneapolis, Rebecca Jim in Miami and at Tar Creek.
Yeah.
And they formed this beautiful friendship. And it's through suffering, right? But it's like also, what can we do together? And Catherine weaves together all these different people from Birmingham, Alabama. And we're all experiencing this just in our own neighborhoods, but it's a shared experience, but we can collectively take shared action. And so that's why I love the Art Thieves so much, is because it was that like kick in the rear. It's like, we have to do it, and we can.
Yeah, we can, and that's just it. We're much stronger together. Vanessa Lilly, and Blood
Heck
Sisters
yeah.
is writing about Tar Creek, and these are true things that people should know about.
I have Ground Glass and Blood Sisters both on my staff picks at City Lights. Hardly anyone's read those books, and thus, whenever I ask, do you know about Tar Creek and what happened there? Do you know about Pitter, Oklahoma? Do you know anything about Oklahoma? No. I would say 900 out of 1,000, like you just, I always ask and I'm like, how have you not heard this? But again, look at where it's located.
Yeah. Well, and
it's in no person's land really in terms of where anyone would travel. And it was intentionally, it's been suppressed. No one wants to promote that.
Yeah, no, the businesses that poisoned Oklahoma, they made their money and they went to California.
Yeah.
So, and there's no accountability and they're, the people who live there are, dealing with cancer. So,
but I'm really glad you took that book and it helped shape your work and made it even stronger.
Oh, yeah.
So
All right.
that's a great number 2. What's number 3?
Conquest of Texas. Number 3. Oh, okay. I'm going to go with Isaac Storm. Okay. So Isaac Storm. Have you read Isaac Storm?
No.
All right. A man, a time, in the deadliest hurricane in history. Well, we were living in Texas, so we'd go to Galveston every now and then. And, Galveston was pretty much wiped out by a hurricane on September 8th, 1900. Wait, what's today? Oh, we just missed it.
Oh, yeah.
5 days ago in 1900. It's by Eric Larson. And I'm not sure if it's first. I think it might be a second book because he also wrote one about a gun, I think, or a bullet or something. And he's gone on to Devil in the White City, Thunderstruck, Garden of the Beast, Deadwake, Lethal Passage, The Naked Consumer. But this is my favorite book because this is about the history of the Weather Service. And what Eric Larson does so beautifully is braid different elements together and show how, because this happened, then this happened. It began innocently in the seaside town of Galveston, Texas. Even Isaac Klein, resident meteorologists for the U.S. Weather Bureau failed to grasp the true meaning of the strange deep sea swells and peculiar winds that greeted the city that morning. Mere hours later, Galveston found itself submerged by a monster hurricane that completely destroyed the town and killed over 6,000 people in what remains the greatest natural disaster in American history. And Isaac Klein found himself the victim of a devastating personal tragedy. Using Klein's own telegrams, letters, and reports, the testimony of scores of survivors, and our understanding of the science of hurricanes, Eric Larson builds a chronicle of one man's heroic struggle and fatal miscalculation in the face of a storm of unimaginable magnitude.
Wow.
It's to me, it's the most powerful thing. It's the most powerful piece of nonfiction. Well, it's up there because I've got another one I'm going to talk about. But the idea that, we think that science will save us is not a new idea. So here was Isaac Klein, who was an exemplary weather prognosticator, and they had all the new equipment. They had, the this and the that and the things on top of the roof. And in Cuba, they were saying the Cubans were just passionate and overreacting, and it wasn't going to be that bad. And so let's see. I should have pulled a quote from this one. But so Isaac Klein is basically in charge of the Weather Bureau in Galveston. And it's the beginning of the Weather Bureau, and they're trying to prove themselves. They really don't think there's going to, if there's going to be a storm, yeah, but, how bad can it be? Because they haven't seen one like this before. And so Isaac is in charge of the Weather Service. They've sort of downplayed how serious, they don't understand how serious the storm actually could be. And by the time they do, it's pretty much too late. And so because there's one train that you can take out of Galveston, and even that train ends up getting swamped with water and people there die. People are hiding in a lighthouse. I mean, the water is rising and rising. Anyway, so I'm going to cut through this a little bit. So, and Isaac Klein had, built his house and said, it was storm-proof, right? It's hurricane-proof. So a bunch of his neighbors come to his house. It's not storm-proof. And he's got children. His brother is there. His brother's dog is there. And his wife, who is pregnant, they're all there in this house along with some neighbors. And it gets hit by a big wave and just tumbles over. So Isaac's voyage at 25th and Q, so that's, the address or the intersection. He was alone in the water. His family was gone. He flailed his arms and reached deep underwater and kicked his legs to feel for soft things, clothing, someone alive. He felt only square shapes, planks, serrated edges. He had been inside the house. Now he was outside in darkness, and wind so fast it planed the water smooth. There was lightning. He saw debris everywhere jutting from the sea. He saw a child. He shimmied free of the timbers and swam hard. The rain stung. He could hold his eyes open only a few seconds at a time. He came to her and felt his arm grow from the water and circle her, and knew immediately the child was his Esther, his 6-year-old, his baby. He spoke into her ear. She cried and grabbed him hard and put him under, but he was delighted. She asked for her mother. He had no answer. The house began to break up. He swam her away. He was elated. He was distraught. He had found one daughter but lost everyone else. His memory of them would be tinted the yellow of lamplight. He tried to place them in the room, and by doing so to place them in the sea. His wife had been with him in the center of the room with Esther. His 2 eldest daughters had been near the window beside Joseph. Why had they not surfaced too? Isaac and his baby drifted. There was more lightning. He coughed water through his nose and mouth. In the next flare, he saw 3 figures hanging tight to floating wreckage. Isaac swam Esther toward them against the wind. He heard a shout. Joseph Klein said, "My heart suddenly leaped with uncontrollable joy. In 2 figures that clung to the drift about 100 feet to the leeward, I discovered my brother and his youngest child. Isaac, we placed the children in front of us, turned our backs to the winds, and held planks taken from the floating wreckage to our backs to distribute and lighten the blows which the wind-driven debris was showering upon us continually. Joseph, our little group now numbered 5. We remained close together, climbing and crawling from one piece of wreckage to another, with each of the latter in turn sinking under our weight. At one time, it seemed as though we were indeed lost. A weather-battered hulk that had once been a house came bearing down upon us, one side upreared at an angle of about 45 degrees, at a height from 6 to 8 feet higher than our drift. I was conscious of being direly frightened, but I retained sufficient presence of mind to leap as the monster reached us and to get a grip with my hands on the highest edge of the wreck. My weight was enough to drag it perceptibly lower in the water, and I called my brother, who added his weight to my own. Isaac, sometimes the blows of debris were so strong we would be knocked several feet into the surging waters, when we would fight our way back to the children and continue the struggle to survive. At one point, 2 other castaways, a man and a woman, joined us on the wreckage that at that time was serving us as a lifeboat. The strangers remained with us for some little time until the man crawled up to where I sat, pulled the 2 children away, and tried to shelter himself behind my body. I pushed him indignantly away and drew the children back. He repeated the unspeakable performance. This time I drew out a knife that I carried and threatened him with it. So Isaac's brother, Joseph, also works for the Weather Service.
Whoa!
And so, needless to say, Isaac does end up losing family members, and he and his brother fight over who's at fault and, who should have done this and who was wrong. And it severs their relationship as well, even though they survive. In the absence of a body, there was always hope. Isaac continued his search, but as conditions worsened, as fears of disease grew, and as more and more corpses turned up, among them a neighbor, the hunt for miracles and bodies became more complicated. Hope receded, and simple emptiness took its place.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it's powerful. And the thing was, when I read this book, I had small children. And of course, I was desperate to write. I wanted time to myself. I wanted time to, to make art, to draw, and having family takes away from that. Having, just like having a job takes away from that as well. But what this book did for me is it reminded me that jobs don't matter. People matter.
Yeah.
It reminded me that stuff doesn't matter. It can all be gone. No one is promised tomorrow. And I think for Isaac, who killed himself to do well with the Weather Service and help build the Weather Service, and then to lose his children, or lose a child, or lose his wife, and, basically get done wrong by the Weather Service, because then they want to blame someone.
Yep.
After he leaves, he focuses on art. He moves to New Orleans. He focuses on art. For me, it was just really, it was about how easy it is to prioritize the wrong thing and to, and then to have to live with that regret.
Woof.
So,
that's deep.
Anyway.
But yeah, I mean, what a story to help remind you of that, because I constantly make choices with my own death in mind. I mean, it's like there were stories for me that kind of my mortality just became the driver of how do I treat people? Do I ignore this request by a friend for me to do something for them? Mm-hmm. Like, to go see their art exhibit a couple hours away, or like whatever it might be. The point is, can I live with it? Can I be at the end of my life, if I do get lucky enough to live another 40 years, all of the accumulations of those potential slights, or like whatever I do to other people, like I want to be there for people, but it really took remembering how fragile human relationships are, and just how quickly everything can be taken away, for me to realize, like, I need to have some urgency, even with things that don't seem like they're urgent. Like, even my mom, she used to come from a different city. She lived in a different city. She was in Columbus. We were in Dayton. My dad was raising 2 boys basically alone, but man, she would like drive right after a 12-hour workday to my basketball games. And so even with a mom that was working constantly, to see that kind of sacrifice, it's like, okay, that was so meaningful to see. And I try to give that to people now, like, okay, I might be tired, but like, okay, what's really important,
Yeah. And what are you building?
Yeah.
I mean, how are you exercising your heart muscle, right? Which is the most important thing in the world, which is empathy, in my opinion. And how are you doing that? And the way, attention is love.
Yeah. And especially, I don't have children, but attention is vital. Because when children are ignored or feel like their parents don't care or teachers don't care, that's when shit goes sideways. And at the very least, if you have parents that give you that attention and even siblings, like that's that can go so far for just their health and well-being. You know, it's the simplest thing, but it's the one thing you can always give, really, if you think about it. So, and I know you take all of your roles in life very seriously. But
I screw up.
Right, of course.
Which is what Chooch Helped is about.
Yep, that's true. Yeah.
Parents screwing up.
And apologizing.
And being sorry and trying to do better.
Yeah. And that's how relationships work. You know, everyone will screw up.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
ideally, they try and do better.
Good ones.
Good ones, yes.
Good ones. Yeah, ideal relationships. But yeah, I love that. Gosh, I mean, now anyway, I'm like... Yeah. That passage alone got me wanting to.
If you do audiobooks, it's a fantastic audiobook.
Ooh.
It's one of my weird comfort reads. Yeah. But I write horror.
Yeah. So that tracks.
Talk about horror. Like, you know, they were finding bodies in trees covered in snake bites. Jeez. I mean, there are all these things that you don't think about with a hurricane or a flood and, you know, all this stuff that's like, you know, and the wind blowing something so hard, it could do very, very, very serious damage. Anyway, there's all this stuff that I had never thought about. Yeah. You know, you just think it's water and it's rain, and it's wind, and yeah, you know, it's bad, it's a flood. Oh no, it's so much worse than that.
I mean, it is punishing.
Yeah.
Flood books in Appalachia are things I've read a lot about, and like people that have experienced that, the etched memory of what they saw. And even in the aftermath, I mean, you're never going to forget that. And we can't possibly, if you haven't experienced it, you couldn't possibly know the damage that's inflicted on people and property and animals. Like, yeah. So I was not ready for that. So I'm really glad this is quite a diverse collection of books. So what do we got number 4?
This is Wasteland, The Great War and the Origins of Modern Horror by W. Scott Poole. He's a fantastic writer.
Okay, cover. Oh my gosh.
Have you heard this one or read this one? Okay.
No.
Anyway, so it's exactly what it's about. It's World War I, and my Cherokee grandfather, Jess Rogers, was in World War I. He took care of the horses. So the story in Man-Made Monsters is inspired by him.
That's a great story.
And so, thank you. And so, let's see. I'm just trying to see if I can. I know I have marked something, so I'm wondering if I have something that I want to share. Ooh, I hope I don't cry. All right. So Wasteland is about how World War I, you know, was such a physically horrific war. If you've ever watched, gosh, what is that show? Oh, gosh. It's a British show. It's a black comedy. Oh, what is it called? It's got Rowan Atkinson, but he's playing, you know, not Mr. Bean. And so, I mean, that one's actually, I think in some ways that kind of treats World War I, you know, in a way that, because it's British, right? And so, of course, the British lost a generation. I mean, they lost all those men who should have been the next teachers, the next politicians, the next philosophers, writers. It lost a generation. But of course, they were not the only ones who lost. And so the philosopher Walter Benjamin, I can honestly say this is where I learned about Walter Benjamin. Politics became horror in a way that contemporary critics of the dangerous new political movements of the 20s and 30s noticed. Walter Benjamin worried that fascism had become God, I'm going to start crying. Okay. Walter Benjamin worried that fascism had become politics as art, or in his more difficult description, efforts to render politics aesthetic. This means, in essence, that politics became for fascism a style and horror. Their own fears and the need to prompt others to become afraid constituted that style. Fascism did not give the workers or the landless rights. It did not change the economic power structure as communism aspired to do. It left, Benjamin pointed out, the workers and the lower middle class in exactly the position they had always been, but now with a chance to express themselves. Fascism gave the average German permission to vent rage and pain onto marginalized groups, justified its adherents' worst fears and most bitter hatreds, and urged them to act on them. The offer to let this political horror film play out became a poison running like mercury in much of Europe. The scars of the war midwifed the fascist impulse. These scars ran even deeper than shell shock, loss, and the terror suffered by civilians. The Great War marked the end of a mental world, an apocalypse of the paradigms of the proper workings of both life and death. Italy's Partito Nazionale Fasciste, the first successful fascist party in Europe, reveled in this destruction and asserted that the wasteland gave them a place to build their iron fortress of fear. Europe's land of phantoms offered a dead world where Nosferatu's towers could rise. The despair of the world after the Great War allowed fascist theorists to claim they could create a new future on the bones of the past. And then...
Holy fuck.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me see if I've got... I'm going to skip to the end, just where I think Scott's writing about Walter. Walter Benjamin, whose work serves as inspiration for this book, has been dead for almost 80 years. He visited Berlin for the last time in March 1933. He came to retrieve his library stored in an apartment that the Nazis seized from him. The regime had banned his books, including one he published under a pseudonym, a rather dry collection of 18th century letters of Holderlin, Schleiermacher, Kant, and Schlegel. The book briefly survived censorship when published in 1936 because it bore for the Nazis the promising title of German Men. However, the Nazis suppressed its small print run in 1938. By then, Benjamin had taken refuge in Paris. Of course, by the summer of 1940, the city had fallen into Nazi hands, and he fled when the German army entered the city in June. He gave some of the material he hoped to work on further to literary and cultural critic George Bataille. The Gestapo seized or destroyed the rest of Benjamin's manuscripts and his books when they tossed his apartment. He and his sister lived in hiding for several weeks in Lourdes and then Marseille. They knew they were not safe in what had become the Nazi puppet regime led by French fascists and collaborators. Benjamin became increasingly depressed, not knowing what would become of him, and even uncertain, as difficult as this may be for some to understand, if he wanted to live with the loss of his irreplaceable book collection. He did not know that friends in New York at Myers and the Frankfurt School had been working to prepare for his arrival. Apparently, Max Horkheimer made arrangements for Benjamin to take a teaching post at the University of Havana. This set up the extraordinary possibility that in the years ahead, one of the great intellectuals of European Marxist thought would have met a young Fidel Castro and other leaders in the soon-to-be-born 26th of July movement in their formative period. This never happened. Becoming increasingly hopeless, Benjamin joined a group of exiles, Siegfried Krakauer among them, in an effort to travel by foot across the Pyrenees into Spain. The United States had granted visas to a number of political refugees, and Benjamin's American friends made sure he received one. Hannah Arendt notes that the United States did not include Jews in the category of political refugee. Benjamin also managed to get a travel visa from the Spanish government that would allow him to cross into Portugal and depart to America via Lisbon. He did not, however, have the required exit visa from France, and the Nazi flunkies who ran Vichy had no desire to displease Berlin. So Benjamin and his coterie set out for the village of Portbou, rumor claiming it an unguarded entrance into Spain. Franco's fascist regime, also eager to please their Nazi patrons, had closed the border on the very day of Benjamin's arrival. Spanish security forces intended to return them to France the following morning. That night, September 26, 1940, Walter Benjamin committed suicide while guards stood outside his small hotel room. In a terrible irony, Portbou opened up the very next day for a brief period, and the remainder of his group passed through Spain and on to Lisbon. Benjamin's friend Hannah Arendt passed through this choke point at the Spanish border soon after. Benjamin had believed, unlike many of his friends and colleagues, that pop culture, film included, could have revolutionary possibilities. But he knew well the Janus face of mass culture. There is no document of civilization which is not at the same time a document of barbarism. Anyway.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my
Wasteland,
gosh.
The Great War.
That is incredible.
Yeah, and the Origins of Modern Horror by W. Scott Poole. And it's way too relevant right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's horrifying to read that someone could write that now, and it would feel justified.
A little too visceral. All right.
I mean, wow, that sounds incredible.
So here is another one that these are kind of almost a pair, but again, I told you I'm doing 7.
Let's do it.
So what are we on? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 5.
Yeah, 5.
Oh, yeah, 5. Okay, I'm good. All right, Ghostland, An American History in Haunted Places by Colin Dickey. So I'm a graduate student. I'm working on a dissertation about Native Lit, and of course I write horror. And so this book, I had picked it up and I was super interested in it, but I had glanced through it and I was like, oh, there's not really anything Native in here. I was so wrong.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so because okay, let's see. An intellectual feast for fans of offbeat history. It's so much more than that. The good news, nothing's really haunted except by the spirits we imagine for ourselves. The bad news will make anything haunted. The great news, there's Ghostland. Colin Dickey gets to the heart of the matter over and over, skirting any tourist trap sensationalism in favor of historical context that touches on the longing and tragedy underneath ghost stories. It's a tour of America's haunted places that takes an insightful look at how ghost stories are made, how ghosts and historical visibility are so tightly intertwined, and why we keep looking for the dead. And
wow.
So there's a chapter in here about, I can't remember where it is. I don't know if it's North Carolina. Anyway, it was a place where, I want to say it was North Carolina, where a lot of enslaved people were trafficked and brutalized. However, the ghosts that people talk about are the ghosts of white people. So it's sort of a meditation on like who gets to be a ghost. I mean, if the white people are the only ghosts, then they're the ones who really own the land, right? But then,
wow, that's a question. Dang.
Yeah, like who gets to be a ghost? And also, and so as far as like, oh gosh, I don't know. This book is just brilliant. And it made me think about so many things. It will ruin some of your favorite ghost, myths probably. Yeah. So
hey, some
spoiler,
things are meant to be ruined.
Yeah. So. Spoiler alert: the Winchester house isn't quite what.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
But the mental hospitals, he just really dives into like who gets to be a ghost and why are we telling these stories and how many of these stories. And so what this actually, it kind of helped me with was, I was always really irritated with kind of the 70s and the way that Native people were used as like signifiers of this is really authentic. This is a curse. Yeah. And also just killed off immediately. But also, it just seemed so lazy and often it was lazy, but also the whole country is a burial ground, an Indian burial ground. It's all an Indian burial ground. And so thinking about that and, one of the first inappropriate books I ever read when I was 12 years old, standing in the grocery store while my mom was shopping was Peter Straub's Ghost Story. Best first line ever. I won't tell you the worst thing I ever did, but I'll tell you the worst thing I ever saw. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
So I read that, and then there was some stuff in there I just didn't get, but because I was 12, right? But I got the ghost stuff, right? And I got the what was going on in it, and but he's also, I mean, he brings in a Wendigo. I mean, and he's also got, the trope of the quote unquote magical Negro in it. So, I mean, he's just throwing them all in there. But after reading this, I also thought, well, how much of this is navigating guilt? Why do we assume, it's a Native curse? Well, y'all did bad things. So, maybe you're thinking it's spiritual karma, right? And so it's got everything. Oh, yeah, the Civil War. Gosh, how often are like hauntings about establishing territory, right? We've always been here. My family's been here for generations. Okay, yeah. Okay, Yellowstone. Anyway. But and the whole Winchester house thing is, the story is because she's afraid of the Indians who have all been killed by Winchesters, and so he just, it's a brilliant book, and Ghostland and American History and Haunted Places, because the dead are never dead.
Yeah.
And so
gosh, this is reminding me of a couple of movies. There's a Haitian film that deals with the undead, and a more recent Korean film, and I'm blanking on the names, but after we get done recording, I'm going to share them with you because I would wonder about your opinion of because these are like deep history ghost stories, like colonial shit that like honestly took me by surprise, given what I thought the films were going to be. And the message, which was much deeper than I want this to be a little scarier or like thrilling. It's like, no, you need to consider what you've done, like what has happened for the last 400, maybe even 1,000 years. So I just remind me at some point to tell you those, because I think, you would appreciate them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So if you look in the index, it says Native Americans. And so Amityville, Binghamton, burial grounds, land disputes, Myrtle's plantation, pet cemetery, Winchester rifles, anyway, so there's one where it's like it's in Binghamton, I think, and it's like,
wow,
the street, the town is cursed because, the native people were here and massacred or something, and they put a curse on the town. And so that's why all the businesses on the street fail constantly. And so it's a fabulous book. And I actually think it's the most important thing I've read for graduate school.
Whoa.
For what I do.
Yeah, that's high praise.
All right. So that was book 5.
Awesome.
Book 6, I had such a hard time because Victor Laval is like, I want to do what Victor does. So he's just brilliant the way, he does what I did in Man-Made Monsters. He does that, it seems effortlessly. He like researches the heck out of something and then tells you a scary story, braiding it in. And so if you've read have you read The Changeling? There are trolls. It's in New York. It's oh my gosh! And they started to do a series, and I don't know if they're going to finish it, but it was good.
Well, you want? We could just talk about Victor, like generally. Like, do you want to pick? Because there's a stack of 4 books, and I think people should know, because that's an important thing. Like, if you're having a hard time,
yeah. No, Victor is. I wish I could do what Victor does so well. The Ballad of Black Tom. Have you read that? Okay, have you read Lovecraft at all? Okay, so I was not a Lovecraft fan because I'm well aware of all the racist baggage that comes with it. And I experienced the same thing growing up and reading things and not catching the microaggressions, not catching the racism, not catching the misogyny or the fat phobia until I got older, right? So you read these things, these stories you fall in love with, but you have blind spots because you're just not like that. And so you just don't see it. Or that's the way the whole world is, right? And so you just expect it. So the Ballad of Black Tom, he takes the character of Black Tom, who's in a Lovecraft story. I think it's called Something at Red Hook. Let's see. I can't remember what it's called. Something at Red Hook. But anyway, Victor Laval, by the time when you read this, you'll be like, oh my gosh, he really knows the history of Harlem. He knows the history of New York in a way that Lovecraft couldn't have even thought about.
Wow.
And so he humanizes a character that has been, dehumanized, who's been stereotyped, who's been, portrayed in a derogatory racial way. And he humanizes him. And he gives him agency, he gives him power, but he also gives him regret, because when you're navigating a world, what are you giving up to get ahead, right? And is that a cost you're willing to pay? And did you even know that you would be paying a cost? And so Ballad of Black Tom, it's a novella, super fast read. Oh, and the audiobook is also awesome on that. Devil in Silver. Victor Laval is he's African American, I believe. He has Caribbean ancestry. I might be getting things wrong, but The Devil in Silver is written from the point of view of a white man.
Oh.
And just the empathy that Laval shows for this character who gets dumped in a mental hospital on a Friday night and left there, and how it escalates, and it's called The Devil in Silver. And so it's very much, there were articles that came out in the New York Times about the abominable treatment of people who were being dumped in mental hospitals in New York. And so I thought, as a monster, I thought I had dog-eared a page. So I try not to do that, but every now and then I do, but it doesn't look like I did. So Pepper is the white guy, and he's got a little bit of a temper. And so he ends up in a mental hospital. And being with people who are very unlike him and becoming friendly with them, becoming allies with them. And there's a hilarious scene at one point where I think one of the characters says, who is black, is like, yeah, well, I'm not going in there because you know what happens in the horror movies. And then Pepper's like, dang, the black guy did die first. And it's just so funny that Victor is playing with these tropes.
Yeah.
But he also does something here in The Devil in Silver and in Lone Women where he's reckoning with what's happened to Native people in this country. I mean, he's refusing to ignore it and just leave it out of the story altogether. But he does it. I think he navigates it really well. And so what's hilarious is the mental patients get one of the doctors starts a book club. And so the nurse who's running the book club brings in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. You can't talk about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest without talking about Chief, right? And so she's like, oh, I figured you all would love to read this because you're all stuck in a mental hospital, right? And you know, this is about that. And one of the women is like, that book's not about that. That book is about, you know, young people who are pushing up against, you know, society, and it's about the 70s. And, you know, she's like, it's not about a mental hospital. And so, and I thought, you know, that's what's so great is because that character of Chief, you know, in that film, you know, the stoic sort of, and Will Sampson is fantastic, but he's a symbol, right? He's a symbol, and you know, people are wanting to be like the Indian, right? Run free, go, you know. So the mental patients are like, we want Jaws. We want to do Jaws because there's a monster in this asylum. And that's just it. Their patients are dying. And there seems to be some sort of mystery about it. And they're convinced there's a monster basically in the walls. Wow. And they're like, we want to read Jaws. And I'm like, of course, because Jaws is like the first slasher. Yeah. It's a monster film. Yes.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It sounds like Victor. Kevin Brockmeyer calls certain authors, such as Walter Tevis, an everything writer for him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Where it's like, I mean, yes, some of the stories, like that's what you would strive to do, you know, like at your best. And that everything you read of theirs, it's like, yeah, like that's, and I've never heard it phrased that way. But then if you're having this hard of a time using one even, of course that's an everything writer.
Yes. So,
and yeah, I mean, gosh,
he's amazing. Yeah.
He sounds awesome. And I'm glad you told me about that because also a couple of these sound like something that I would get my brother for a gift. Yeah. I think like spot on because he also loves Harlem stories.
Oh yeah, Ballad of Black Tom's amazing.
Yeah, so that's as you were talking about this
in New York.
Because you and my brother would love to.
Well,
a lot of parallels of interest in horror, and his more in film, but he also reads a lot of it. So
you know, white writers have stolen the Wendigo. They've stolen a lot of Native stories, and I love that Victor is like, oh yeah, well I'm going to take your troll.
That's great.
And I'm gonna do this with it. And he does such a great job. And Lone Women is awesome. He does, you can tell he does a lot of research. I did not know that women were able to go and get land by themselves, like out in Montana. But then he also does talk about how, you know, oh yeah, the Indians used to be here. And, you know, and anyway, but it's a terrific story about a woman out there by herself and also figuring out, you know, who really are the monsters. And so, you know, I love it.
Sounds like a Western movie I watched recently.
Probably, possibly. Oh, yeah.
It's called maybe God's Country.
Oh, okay.
It's about a woman who lives alone out in either Wyoming or Montana. And I mean, in terms of like revenge stories.
Oh, yeah.
Of a woman against just men.
And
the horrors they inflict upon people is one of the best I've watched in a while.
Yeah, this one, it's fantastic. Lone Women. And I didn't know Black women were able to go and do that. And she does. And he did a lot of research for it.
Well, we're definitely going to get Victor LaValle books in City Lights now, too. Because these sound like stories that a lot of our customers would love, too.
All right. My last one is I'm ending on a happy note.
Yeah. I was like, here's some color.
Right.
We have talked about a lot of horror.
Anyway, so I know, right? And
yeah,
so, but
go figure.
actually, I did a book event with a school the other day, and they asked me what my favorite book was, and I was doing an event for Chooch, and I was like, well, I'm gonna pull a picture book then. And notice I have 4. So Daniel Vanderveer, if you don't have a book by him, go get them. They're all fantastic. Oh, that's actually not Daniel's book. That's also a good book, but that's not on my list this time. So Horizon by Daniel Vanderveer, it won the American Indian Library Association Youth Literature Award. It is told, he wrote the story and there are no words. It's all pictures.
Sweet.
So, and it's
wow, that is beautifully
It's
illustrated.
just amazing. And it's a great story about this girl whose grandma is like, get out there and check on those lazy boys who aren't taking care of the sheep. And so she has a headscarf. Hang on, I'm going to see what it's called. It's a traditional sort of Navajo headscarf. I thought it had a name somewhere. Oh, there it is. Daniel does an amazing job. He
oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so let's see. Post a picture of your sunny scarf designs to social media. Anyway, but what Daniel's anyway, so she's got this headscarf and she uses it in a way to take care of the sheep. That's her power, right? And so she's powerful and she's using, something traditional and doing incredible things. And it's called Horizon.
So
and
cool.
it's just like, it's amazing. There are no words. Fall in Line Holden is kind of about it's about a little boy he's just not, they want him to be still. So they want him to, pay attention. And so he keeps falling out of line and they keep telling him, get back in line. And it's just, let's see. Boarding school education has had a profound impact on the loss of culture. And this is from the back of Daniel's book. Hang on, I'm going to start with the author's note. Fall in Line Holden was written with the intention of promoting creative thinking and originality, but also to begin conversations about a grim period in American history. Boarding school education has many connotations to different people, but to an entire generation of indigenous people, it was a militant form of conformity and an attack on language and culture. Thus, a generation of individuals were detached from their sense of identity, resulting in a generational disconnect that has exacerbated the negative social and economic conditions that exist in many indigenous communities today. Boarding school education has had a profound impact on the loss of culture and identity in many indigenous communities, resulting in poor economic and social conditions. To all those who survived boarding school education, my father included, thank you for your sacrifices. We're now able to move forward with both Western and traditional knowledge and taking ownership of our future based on the resilience of our past. And
wow,
so,
this is like...
Yeah. And so, it's this little boy and he's just, they can't wait to be creative. They have to escape they start here and they go to the, art room and cafeteria and the music room and the computer lab and the recess door. And it's just a really sweet book. We've got a little boy who's got a traditional, Navajo.
I love that.
Bun. I can't remember what that's called either, but I'm not Navajo. Deep in the heart of indigenous nations stood a strict Western school of stern education where everyone obeyed and did what they were told, and conformity ruled all to fit like a mold until a boy fell out of line.
Heck yeah.
Anyways,
I love that.
Yeah,
we're getting that in the store too.
Yeah, get everything by
I'm
Daniel.
always looking for new children's books.
Yeah, everything that Daniel does. And so this book called We Weave, he signed it for me and it says family is everything.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of Daniel's work. And so it's about the lockdown and it's about, a little boy who's on the reservation and he needs a computer to go to school because they're on lockdown and he doesn't have one. And, sometimes there's no internet even out there. And so his grandmother is weaving a rug that she wants to sell so they can buy him a computer. And so she says, school's going virtual, Shiazi. You'll have to learn from home. But we don't have a computer, Masani. We only connect through my phone. What will we do? How will I learn? I need a computer for school. We weave to get what we need, Masani replied. It's how we've always survived. And so throughout the whole story, she's weaving and you keep seeing this little boy with a phone. And I'm like, what is he doing? Why? I don't understand why he's on the phone, Daniel. And then he's filming it. And then at the end, she's like, I'm sorry, I finished it, but I don't have time to sell it and get you a computer before school starts. And he said, Grandma, I've already posted it on the internet and I've already sold it and we can go buy a computer. I already have the money. You just have to ship it. And so the whole time he's been documenting how she got the wool, dyed the wool, made the, and so Daniel's really great. Sequoia, we've been using technology to protect our culture and to protect ourselves for a very long time.
Yeah.
There's good and bad with technology.
Yeah.
And so, but when you can use it in order to save yourself, the same way she's using weaving to save the family, to feed them or whatever, that's really powerful. And so Daniel Vanderveer, his book Horizon, which has no words, so I can't read it to you. I
can't think of like a better author to finish with based on all the things we talked about. And even like, I was at the way we see the world at the Cherokee Casino, which had 4 different films this year. And this was in early August. I highly recommend if anybody's in Cherokee in North Carolina to go. So Lauren Waters was there with Robert Hunter and Dana Tiger. But there was one in particular that really struck me as parallel to your writing and your appreciation for like history and tradition and keeping that alive, because it was a Mohawk filmmaker. I really wish I would have remembered. I tried to remember the pronunciation of her name. Kitsitzioni Fox. And it was her documenting Jessica Shenandoah's 4-season journey to revive the healing practices of her ancestors, addressing knowledge lost through boarding schools and forced assimilation. But one of those practices was the long process of making pottery, that she like reconstructed the history by going to the museums, looking at the old pieces, working with the people that worked at the museums. And then they were filming this process the whole time of like, just the labor that went into making those things. And it was so beautiful. And as I was watching that, I was just, thinking of all of these beautiful people, including yourself, that write about this exactly. It's like taking that time and honoring where you come from and creating something together and bringing that back. And it was like so important to this filmmaker and the people involved. And I was just like, oh gosh, it's so special. But like all of those films, I feel like illuminate this idea that, we need to keep these traditions together, but we also need to live now, right? And share the stories of what we're doing. So it just, these books, I couldn't think of a better set of books to end with, given how you live and what we've discussed. That was awesome. Oh my gosh. So as I said, there's one more thing I wanted you to read. Okay. And I thought about doing the end of Man-Made Monsters, which is an incredible ending.
Thank you.
But it was actually...
It's You Always Hurt the One You Love.
So if you don't mind just reading that chapter to end, because
And full disclosure, when I wrote this, I sat and wept while I typed it. Because I don't know where it came from, but I channeled it.
Because I felt the same way when I read it the first time.
All right. The night Adam was set to leave town, I helped Levi pack a small backpack of his favorite things. He knew when Mom and Dad got back, they were going to be going with him to another hospital out of state for a series of treatments. After packing snacks and toys, we stayed up all night watching movies. I cried during Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I had tried to plan a fun evening, one he would always remember, one without pain, one where nothing sad happened. I think I was successful for him. I sat on the floor in front of the projector screen and held him, tried to memorize the way he breathed, the way he said, "I love you, Stevie," the way he held my hand, holding on, how sweet and without malice or hatred our Levi was. I suddenly wished that instead of sending him away, hurting Mom and Dad, frightening him, letting him feel alone, I could instead die in his place. How many other humans had prayed for this? For a moment, I felt in touch with the world's pain. "Is this your favorite movie?" Levi asked. I shook my head. "What is?" Levi turned to ask me these questions, but then turned back to watch the screen. "I don't know," I replied. "Anything I can watch with you, I guess." Levi laughed. "I love you too, Stevie. You'll always live in my heart." He squeezed the hands I had wrapped around him. I sat there watching the cartoon and weeping silently. I was so careful to not let him know I was crying. I wished I drank. I wished there was something in the house that would take away the bone-deep pain I had. If I had been alone, I would have screamed the way an animal who has lost its baby cries. When Adam called to say he was parked on the street near the park gate, I suggested he walk over and bring Princess. I turned off all our security cameras. Adam had already planned to leave Princess with me when he left. Lauren said she'd take her if my parents had a problem with it. I figured they'd be too distracted once Levi was gone to care. I grabbed my bag, in which I had tucked Levi's smaller backpack of personal items. Adam knocked on the door, and my brother threw it open, greeting Princess first. When we get to the park, can we let her run? He asked. With so much hope, what was left of my heart broke. How would it ever heal? How would I love anyone else? To love was to be insane, to ignore the reality that loving eventually means losing, to open your front door and say, yes, please grieve. Come in and live with me so you can sucker punch me after years of emotional investment. I was begging the vampire to come live with you and be your love. I never wanted to have this pain in my life again. If the raw wound of these loves scabbed over, I would pick at them and remind myself it wasn't worth it. As we walked, Levi held the flashlight to make sure I was safe and grabbed my hand when I stumbled. And I knew that if love showed up at the door again, I would let it in. I would always let it in. I would open the door and patiently wait, and it would be the center of my world every single time.